I'm John Rodgers from over in Cuyahoga Falls, over in Summit County. And today we're going to take a look up at our fourth largest state, and that is Montana. Big state, big sky. Now, for those of you who need some geography, we're here in Ohio, and here is Montana out here. And we're going to move in a little closer to it. Now we're going to look at a few places, and then we're going into Glacier National Park. This is the biggest part of this presentation. Down in here is, this is Wyoming down in here. This is the site of Custer's last stand, the Battle of the Little Bighorn. And when you hear me talking about the Beartooth Highway, it will be right along in here. And this is Yellowstone in Wyoming. It extends a little bit up into Montana. Right in here I have it marked, and that's sort of Yellowstone River country. This mark is for a buffalo jump. Now hold on to that, and we'll look at that a little closer. That is the Madison Buffalo Jump. This is Helena, the capital. This is Great Falls. This is Fort Benton. Fort Benton is in here because it's the head of navigation on the Missouri River. And way over here is Missoula, and we'll be up in this country a little bit too, and then we'll spend much of the program will be on Glacier National Park. This is the treasure state. It became a state in 1889. It's the fourth largest in land, but the 44th in population. Now I have 2, 4, 5 pictures to whet your appetite for Glacier National Park, and then we're going to leave it for a while and come back to it. This is St. Mary's Lake, and those are the mountains, and the Going to the Sun Highway goes on the far side of the lake. And then this is the Garden Wall, with a highway dropping down below and all sorts of neat things in here. And that is the Garden Wall there with a little bit of snow on it. Here is the Going to the Sun Highway going over through here. That's a Garden Wall with snow, and that snow just fell the day before we got there. This is Swift Current Lake, to give you an idea of some of the beautiful countryside. This is the Continental Divide up here, and right up in here is a glacier. And this is one of my favorites. You have to hike 5 miles in and 5 miles out, and that's the only way to get in there, and this is Iceberg Lake. And then this is on the eastern side, and on the western side is this beautiful McDonald Creek, and then it flows into McDonald Lake. So I guess I got one extra slide in here for the McDonald Lake. Now we're going to start in Lewis and Clark National Forest. I didn't mark this on the map, so I didn't have it there. The first time we were in Montana, the next morning, sort of a gray morning, we get up, and who stands up right about 10 feet behind our tent? Been sleeping there all night, but this deer. And we didn't seem to bother him. He just trotted around our campsite and then went on off into the bush. But that was quite a thrill there. Now we'll get through the sad things here in the very beginning. This is the site of Custer's last stand, the Battle of the Little Bighorn. June 1876. Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer and 210 men of the 7th Cavalry. The Little Bighorn River runs right through there, and the Indian encampment was all over in there. And one summer day in 1876, on this rolling hillside along the Little Bighorn River in Montana, Chief Crazy Horse led his braves, and Custer made his last stand. And the battlefield is part of the national park system. And varied are the feelings as you gaze down that hillside at the markers where each man fell. And it matters not how you personally view George Armstrong Custer. So that was one of the things. And this is how Frederick Remington depicted Custer's last stand. Now, while I have this picture looking off in the distance, I'm a little ways away from the scene at this point, but I wanted to give you a little bit more view of the Indians. In a farewell address in 1909 at the Little Bighorn Council Grounds, Chief Plentycoos, and Chief Plentycoos was of the Crow tribe here in Montana, he summed up the situation of all American Indians. The ground on which we stand is sacred ground. It is the dust and blood of our ancestors. On these plains, the Great White Father at Washington sent his soldiers armed with long knives and rifles to slay the Indian. Many of them sleep on yonder hill, and he would have waved his hand over towards here, where Pahaska, white chief of the long hair, and that's George Custer, so bravely fought and fell. A few more passing suns will see us here no more, and our dust and bones will mingle with these same prairies. I see as in a vision the dying spark of our council fire, the ashes cold and white. I see no longer the curling smoke rising from our lodge poles, and I hear no longer the song of the women as they prepare the meal. The antelope have gone. The buffalo wallows are empty. Only the wail of the coyote is heard. The white man's medicine is stronger than ours. His iron horse rushes over the buffalo trail. He talks to us through his whispering spirit. That would be the telegraph lines. We are like birds with a broken wing. My heart is cold within me. My eyes are growing dim. I am old. Now on the top of the hill is this marker, and each one of the enlisted men's bodies were brought here and buried in a common grave. And the stones that you see out on the battlefield are where that man fell. Now, just a little aside. My wife and I were at Forsyth right over here, and we were going out this road, and we were heading towards Helena, which is over in here. And I was driving that morning, so I told my wife I was going to check 100 miles of road going west from Forsyth. 100 miles of road. There were 12 cars coming towards us and 5 or 6 on our side of the road. Wouldn't you like that here in this area? That would be great. Okay, I'm going to take you up on that Beartooth Highway. This is out of the northeast entrance to Yellowstone National Park. So part of this is in Montana and part is in Wyoming, and I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to tell you where the lines are each time, but you can see the road wrapping around and wrapping around, and the pass that we're going to cross is 10,940 feet. So it's a way up there. And the pass itself is in Wyoming. Red Lodge is the Montana end. And what I want you to notice is the tundra, because you don't see any trees, are right about 12 inches, somewhere between 10 and 13 inches, let's say. Below the surface is a permanent ice, permanent frost. And so nothing can grow, plants cannot penetrate ice and with their roots, and so they can't grow. And so you have this tundra, and only the little plants can grow on it. This is one of my favorite spots on the Beartooth Highway. This is a wraparound highway. Boy, you have to like to drive mountain highways. Now, I'm going to show you how it got its name. If you can see with my laser pointer, that little piece over there, that is called the Beartooth. And that is how the Beartooth Highway got its name. Here's that same lake in a different year and from a different position, but the same lake. Mountainous, oh boy, this is really gorgeous country. And now I have you down into Montana. Everything else will be Montana. And this is in the area by Red Lodge. Red Lodge is a little village down here. And we're still in about east to central Montana here at this point. And you'll find old mining places here. You'll find all kinds of neat stuff. This was a little deserted town, little ghost town. And if you're not familiar with sagebrush, this stuff down here is sagebrush. There's several different varieties of it, but that's one of them. And these old mining spots, a lot of them used to be for silver that they were going after. And this is sort of typical country in eastern part of Montana. Now I have you to that buffalo jump that I mentioned, the Madison Buffalo Jump. This is west of Bozeman. And this particular one, they would set up their camp somewhere out in here, and then the buffalo would be stampeded to come across here and come down like this. And if you were this man and had the ability to cause this, to help cause this, other people were hurting these buffalo, but then you were a very prized member of your tribe. And maybe 25 buffalo would be induced to dash over and kill themselves. If they did not die, there were warriors down below that would kill them right away. And then the women would start taking the hides off and stripping the meat and drying it, and they had several methods of preserving it. But this was one of the ways that they got their food for the winter months. And this is, they call them pishkuns, P-I-S-H-K-U-N. And I'll show you another one up at by Great Falls. This is the Ulm one here. And this is thought to be the largest jump in the United States. Now, and that is the cliff where they would stampede the buffalo. And this is depicting that very cliff. And this painting is in the Historical Museum at Helena, where we will be shortly. And from the top of there, the Ulm Pishkun, you can look out and see the great wheat fields and so forth of this part of Montana. Just have one picture here up by Yellowstone, and this is Quake Lake. The first year, right around the first year that my family went out west, and that would have been 1960, there was an earthquake out here. It killed a number of campers. It had a terrific rock slide, and it created this Quake Lake. And at Livingston, not too far from there, is this beautiful sunset, one of my favorite ones out in the west. I wanted to show you just one thing. You might go to the Browning. This is east of Glacier now, and this is the Museum of the Plains Indians. This particular scene, they're moving the village, and that's all I'm going to show you of that, but it's worth going to, and quite often Browning, you will see, will be on your route going out to Glacier National Park. But I want to take you up to Fort Benton. This is one of the more famous statuary of Lewis and Clark in Sacagawea on the Missouri River, and this is the head of navigation at Fort Benton here. And here's one of the old pieces of the fort there. And I'm back up from it looking at the town, and the Missouri River is going right through there. Now, while we're up in close to Fort Benton, we have moved now over into Great Falls. This is the Missouri River and its falls. Now, Lewis and Clark were told that there was one waterfall and they could probably get around it in about a half a day or a day. There are 7 falls, and it took them 12 and a half days to portage around these falls of the Missouri River, the Great Falls from which the city gets its name. And even though there are a lot of dams involved, you can still get a lot of good pictures of the natural falls. Now you can see where the dam is up here, but all this down here is natural. So you can photograph it selectively, you know, and get the good pictures that way. And this is the river after it has passed those waterfalls. If you have a long lens, you can pick out exactly what you want. And then right on the banks, on the Great Falls side of it, is this beautiful spring. It's called Giant Spring. It's an artesian spring, and it just pours pure water into the Missouri River. Just flows endlessly and great volume. Then while you're in Great Falls, you should stop in at the Charlie Russell Gallery. Now, not all the work in here is Charlie Russell. That's a statue of him there. Charlie Russell was a cowboy, and he was a sculptor and a painter. And whereas Frederick Remington came from the East and did sketches and so forth and went back to upper New York State to do his painting, Charlie Russell did all of his work right out there where he lived. And this is a Charlie Russell buffalo. I'm in the gallery now. Charlie Russell hunting buffalo there. And then these teepees are set up in the gallery. And this is a Charlie Russell Indian children painting. At least I think that's a Charlie Russell painting. And then this one. This is called Conquest of the Prairies, and it's by Irving Bacon. It was done in 1908, and it's 4 feet high, 10 feet across. Now here are the teepees along here, and here are the Indians on their ponies, and here's the buffalo herd. And coming here you see the wagon train, and here's the wagon train boss. And if you were standing right in front of the picture, you could see over here a little village, and a trestle has already come across this river. So you're the Indians here, and everything that you have known in your generation and for generations, centuries into the past, everything is starting to go before your very eyes. And it's called Conquest of the Prairies. Now I have you back over in the east. I wanted to just show you a few other things before we went into Glacier. Some more of the grain fields. I probably took that from New Ulm. And this is some more grain fields from another location. And then out in through here, somebody has plowed here, and this may have been September. They may be getting ready for winter wheat. They would plant that after the middle of September. And then you will see oil rigs out here. This one's still being drilled here. And no foothills. You go across the plains and all of a sudden the Rocky Mountains rise in front of you. I have to apologize for the utility lines there. They still have them. Everywhere you go you find utility lines. And here's that road from Browning going over towards Glacier National Park. And then I take you right up close. And that is, I'm still outside of the national park, but you're looking at the mountains of Glacier. Now further on south, just north of Yellowstone National Park, this is the Yellowstone River, with its mountains in the background, and flowing through here, and it will flow on over into North Dakota and empty into the Missouri at that point, just into the western part of North Dakota. But it's flowing very gently here through this valley. Lewis and Clark were in that section of the Yellowstone River, incidentally, just north of the park. And here are the lovely trumpeter swans. They were in a pond right there, and here's another one. And we're in the state capitol now. This has been the state capitol since 1889, and this is Helena. And that's the dome there. Right across from this behind me is the Historical Society Museum. Beautiful sunset here. And this is part of a painting. Lewis and Clark meet the Flathead Indians at Riggs Hole. And this is the backdrop, and he painted it right there in one of the legislative chambers. And it's behind the speaker's desk. Just a tremendous painting. It covers that whole wall. Now, Charlie Russell used some humor and some sarcasm and cynicism when he labeled some of his pictures. This is a herd of buffalo coming up, and he called it When God Owned the Land. And in the Society Museum, this is the western meadowlark. This is the state bird of Helena, and one of my favorite western birds. I just love to hear those guys sing. And in that same museum, one of the old wagons. And then my wife and I got there on the 4th of July one time, so we saw the 4th of July parade in Helena. They had a good time. Not too many people to watch. There aren't that many people around. But anyhow, here's a mining display. I'm going to go back in my notes. I had one thing I wanted to tell you about the population. The population of Montana is 879,000 people for the whole state, and it's the 4th largest in land area. For instance, I live over in Summit County, and Summit County has 0.3% of Montana's area, but we have 67% of Montana's population. Fantastic, really. The biggest city, if I'm correct, is Billings, and it has only 81,000. But the high point in the state is 12,799 feet, and the low point is 1,862. Now, I don't know the whole story about this, but I've heard all kinds of stories about the usages, some of them not too nice, about this building there in Helena. And then I like the green grass and the steeples back here, and that church is the Cathedral of St. Helena. And then some of the miners had just absolutely given up, and they came back into what is now Helena and to this area, and this is called Last Chance Gulch, and they struck gold in this gulch that you're, it's not like a gulch much anymore, but they still call it that. Now we're on out south of Missoula, and we're over in the western part of the state now. This is St. Mary's Mission. This is a little church at Stevensville. And then very close to that at Hamilton, and built in 1890, is the Daly Mansion. 42 rooms. What did you do with 42 rooms out in the middle of this part of Montana? I'm not sure. But one of the places that you would go, and this is north of Missoula, is National Bison Range. You will find buffalo, meadowlark, elk, antelope, all kinds of beautiful views and so forth. Well, let's take a look at it and see what we see. National Bison Range. It's about 19-mile dirt road that you use going through here, and getting all these nice views, and all of those are buffalo. So you see quite a few buffalo. Here's a big bull. And that's my picture of a living meadowlark. And these are elk. All of these are running wild. They have no, well, they have some in very large areas. They have some fences, but nothing much. For all practical purposes, they are wild. These are antelope. These are antelope or pronghorns, they're also called. And this is the fastest North American mammal. Those guys you're looking at can hit 50 miles an hour. And that's pretty fast in anybody's language. Here's looking at their face now. Pronghorns or antelope. And here's an old Texas longhorn that they have there also in the National Bison Range. You can tell I like the pronghorns. Well, I like the buffalo also. This one just stood there, and that's probably the best antelope picture I have. My wife and I had stayed the night at Kalispell. We were on the western side, and we were going into Glacier National Park the next morning, and we're driving through Kalispell, and we see this little sign, Conrad Mansion, welcome. So we stopped, and we went in, and we did a tour of it. This was built in 1895, this house in Kalispell. And you can take pictures in it, and you can walk around in it. And we went upstairs, and we saw this bed and this bedroom, and we found out that this man, this painting is still in the house, this man, Theodore Roosevelt, slept in that bed when he was out here on a hunting trip. When, I don't know if he was president at the time, he might well have been, but it could have been just before he became president. But Theodore Roosevelt slept in the Conrad Mansion at Kalispell. And then we were out in, well, some more pictures of the house. I forgot, the lighting was pretty good in there that morning, and it is morning. And so I took quite a few pictures, and those are some of the ones where the lighting is best that you can see. And my wife standing looking at the front of the house there. And then you cross over the Flathead Valley to get up into the park. And so this is the Flathead Valley over here. This is Flathead Lake. This has a climate very similar to what we have in the Akron-Cleveland area, fairly similar. Maybe a little bit more snow, but not too much. But it's a beautiful area over there. We've camped in here for the night back a few times ago. Now we have the mountains and us and then the lake. So we are on the eastern side of the lake at this point. And then out in here, they're trying to get the ospreys or fish hawks to come back. So they have built them platforms. The bird builds the nest itself, and each year it adds a little to it. But that's an osprey sitting on his nest, or her nest, or whoever's nest it is. And as we go by this wheat field, the wheat has been cut, but as we go by it, we see a rainstorm off in the distance. And then we make our way into Glacier National Park. Now that picture that you're looking at is one of my belt buckles to remind me of Glacier. Now before we go into it proper, I wanted to go on to the east and show you Chief Mountain. Chief Mountain is just inside the park, just barely from the east. And it is a glacial horn, and I'll talk more about those later. But these mountains are in the park, and I'm viewing them from just at the east. And over in between here will be St. Mary's Lake. Now what we're going to do, this is the park boundary here. We're going to come in and go over going to the Sun Highway. That will be this road coming in here. It makes a long bend here and comes down this side. These fluffs that you see are the location of Sperry Chalet and Granite Park Chalet. And this road, incidentally, I did this out of solder. This road leads into the Many Glaciers area, which we will cover last. So we're going to go on to the Going to the Sun Highway. And the first thing you come to from the east, we're going east to west, first thing you come to is St. Mary's Lake. Now that's 18 miles from roughly where we are up to Logan Pass, which is the Continental Divide, and then there are 32 more miles to the west entrance. And that used to be called Goose Island because a pair of Canadian geese used to rear their young on that little island for years. Now as we go around here, the Going to the Sun Highway will be right up in here, and it will cut and go that way after it hits that point. This is another day. This is a windy day, and you can see whitecaps on St. Mary's Lake. Beautiful lake, beautiful. Now we have made our way in a little ways, and this is Going to the Sun Mountain, 9,642 feet. And I wanted to read you this. The source is not exactly known, but it's in the origin legend of the Blackfeet Indians. Naper, old man of the Blackfeet, created the rocks and forests, the animals, birds, and fishes. He molded a clay man and woman and gave them life. He taught them to hunt and to farm. His mission ended, Naper set out for his home in the sun. He climbed the noble mountain, the one you're looking at, and disappeared amid swirling snows and lightning flashes. And when the sun burst forth, the Indians saw his profile engraved in rock and filled with snow. Going to the Sun Mountain is what it's called, Naper, Going to the Sun. And this is another view of it with snow on it. And beautiful cascades coming down to the road. Lots of mountains, lots of mountains. We're making our way up to toward Logan Pass. And here's something called false corn that grows right up through the snow if the snow doesn't get out of its way. You don't have too much time to grow up in here. And look at Logan Pass. Logan Pass is 6,646 feet, so it's not a high mountain pass by Rocky Mountain standards, but it's neat. And this is Mount Clemens, 8,760 feet, and it's what's known as a glacial horn. It once had glaciers on all sides of it, and the glaciers did not prevail. It kept its place. And here I took you up into Alaska, into Glacier Bay National Park, and there is a glacial horn being formed. If all that ice that is completely surrounding it melts finally and it sticks up, it will be a glacial horn just like Mount Clement that you just saw. A lot of snow, and that had just fallen. There's my little Colombian ground squirrel. You'll see quite a few of those guys around. I don't know why he is so docile there. They usually aren't that tame. And this is the Garden Wall stretching ahead. This is the Continental Divide. We're on the Pacific side. The other side of those mountains is the Atlantic side. Notice the wildflowers out here in the meadow as we go along. And there is somewhat of the same picture with snow on it. This is Reynolds Mountain. This also is a glacial horn, 9,125 feet, a little higher than the last one. Now we're going to be leaving the Logan Pass area for a while and making our way on to the western side. This is our Mount Reynolds again. And this is the Weeping Wall. And if it's really flowing, it's flowing pretty good here. And if you're in that side, it'll get all over your windshield. Just clear mountain water, just beautiful stuff. Now I have a hope here. This is a waterfall in here, and we're heading towards it. And here it is close up. And I have it in a special frame there. This is Bird Woman Falls. And I am hopeful that the Bird Woman that they were talking about was Sacagawea, that this waterfall is named for. Sacagawea was known as Bird Woman. I never have been able to find out whether that is who it's named for. This is the western side of the Garden Wall. And I believe that was the first year we ever saw it, back in 1963. And here is another year with more snow. Really rugged Rocky Mountains out here. And this one we will see from a different vantage point towards the end of the program, but this is Heaven's Peak. Heaven's Peak. This is seen from the Going to the Sun Highway. All of these pictures that you're seeing now, until I say that we're through with the Going to the Sun Highway, all these will have been within 100 feet of the car. We got to go down into that valley, and here is McDonald Creek. Just boiling over, just a wonderful mountain stream. And over on the other side, by a little pond, here's a bull moose. That's the bull, and here is the cow and the little calf. And this is the moose. Now I think, I'm not quite sure, but I think this is the one that's called McDonald Falls. McDonald stream keeps coming down, and it has a number of different waterfalls, but this was one of the bigger ones, and I think that's what it's called. And then you get on down even further, and all of that water goes into this lake. John Muir, who was one of the founders and the first president of the Sierra Club, had a few words to say about this area before it became a national park. And incidentally, you're right alongside of McDonald Lake. This is a lake that was carved by glaciers, and it's 400 feet deep. But back to John Muir, here's what he said. Wander here a whole summer if you can. Thousands of God's wild blessings will search you and soak you as if you were a sponge, and the big days will go by uncounted. The time will not be taken from the sum of your life. Isn't that great? Instead of shortening, it will indefinitely lengthen it and make you truly immortal. Nevermore will time seem short or long, and cares will never again fall heavily on you, but gently and kindly as gifts from heaven. Now, I held on to this picture so I could show you this is the road right on the edge of the lake. That's the going to the Sun Highway. Now, we're going back now across that same road, but now we're going in, and now I can promise you, you gotta hike to see these next places. All of those so far you could see from your car. When you go up here from McDonald Lake to Sperry Glacier, believe me, you gotta walk. It's tough. That's McDonald Lake there, and I like that sunset, and you can see the road there also. But we'll be going up to Sperry Chalet, and behind that waterfall back up in there is Sperry Glacier. My wife and I chose to go someplace besides the glacier. We had seen quite a few in the Canadian Rockies, so I'll show you that. It's a place called Lincoln Peak. And here is where you had to walk to find your way to the chalet. And you go through grizzly bear country, and here is one of the greeters. This is the nanny. These are mountain goats. That's the nanny, and this is the kid back there, and this is our path. You can see the snow on it going on up to the chalet. Now we have come and are a little above, on a little hill above the chalet. That's the roof of the chalet there. These chalets in Glacier, there are two of them. This one and Granite Park Chalet. This one has kerosene lamps. That's modern. Over in Granite Park Chalet, we only had candles. It's very primitive, but they feed you good, and it's a neat experience, really, really neat. And there's my wife sitting there alongside the chalet, and look at her friends over here, mountain goats. Kind of interesting display coming that close. And this is probably the best picture I have of a nanny and a kid. That kid will not get more than about 10 to 12 feet from her mom the first year. When she becomes a yearling, they'll drift off 20 feet or so, and they're together for a couple of years. Now this is where we are starting up on Lincoln Peak. We asked somebody, where should we go if we don't want to go to the glacier? So they suggested here. We're on the top of Lincoln Peak, and this is Lake Ellen Wilson. And Lake Ellen Wilson is dropping a waterfall off this end all the way down to Lincoln Lake down in here. That's Lincoln Lake, right looking straight down at it from the top of Lincoln Peak. I'll show you Lincoln Peak when we get off of it. Now I've turned about 180 degrees and I'm looking over towards the west, and that is that Lake McDonald stretching out in front of you. Now as we're looking down from Lincoln Peak, I don't know if you can see, but way down in this corner is the chalet. And now I'm sure you can see some lakes here, not lakes, these are no more than ponds. And here's the chalet here, and this is the trail that we came in the previous day. This is some of the beautiful wildflowers there. This is glacial lily. And incidentally, glacial lily will bloom right up to snow, but it is a favorite for the grizzly bears. They will dig up half an acre to get the bulbs of the glacial lily to eat. They really like it. And we're right down by the chalet, and that is Lincoln Peak. So we were up on the top of that peak there. And that's where the pictures of Lincoln Lake and Lake Ellen Wilson and all were taken from. Now we have come back down to the road. We've gone on a little further, and my first name is John, and this is the trail into John's Lake. I don't know what John it was named for. This is the lake here, John's Lake. But the one I really like along here is Avalanche Creek. We've gone on a little further now on the road, parked, and we're heading back in. Avalanche Creek, and we will go all the way into Avalanche Lake. And it's just boiling through here, the water coming off of Avalanche Lake, coming down through here, just really good stuff. And there is the lake. Notice all the timber that's floated over to this side of the lake. And that's only two of the waterfalls coming down. Here's some more. See, here's 1, 2, 3, 4 waterfalls coming down into Avalanche Lake. And this is a very easy trail. You can take kids on this. They don't have any trouble with it. Not very difficult at all. And very, very picturesque. And see, up in above this rock here, and behind it is Sperry Glacier. So Sperry Glacier is feeding some of this. Now we're heading on towards Logan Pass, and this is another picture from the road. And at Logan Pass, this time we're not going to stay at the pass, we're going to hike into Hidden Lake. And all kinds of beautiful wildflowers. This, around the garden wall is a great wildflower area, really neat. Now see, that's more like what you would see a Columbian ground squirrel. They'd be not too content. They'd be casting an eye at you to be sure they got out of the way if you move too far. Notice the flowers and the garden wall in the background. We're hiking out towards Hidden Lake, and this is Hidden Lake. It's not too far. I don't think it's more than 1.25 miles or so out to Hidden Lake, but you do have to walk. That's the only way out there. And this is Bear Hat Mountain. This is another one of those glacial horns. A little closer of it. And then I have down here that we ought to see a goat. We'll see him in a moment. One last of Hidden Lake here. Oh, there's the goat. These are mountain goats. These things have such agility. The rangers have said that they will occasionally see the body of one that took a fall off of a high peak, but not very often. They can jump and all kinds of things. Even when they're little, they can move with surprising agility. I like all kinds of flowers, so even though I don't know the names of all of them, I still take pictures of them. And in late June, we had this snowfield to cross, to come out to Hidden Lake and to go back. And that is the garden wall over there. And this is a different year, not nearly as much snow. And I had never seen one of these columns before, this thing here, but a pilot was standing next to me when we were looking at it. We were back at Logan Pass, and he says, boy, that's one thing you want to avoid if you're in a little plane. It's sort of like a compact whirlwind of some sort. I'm not just sure. And then all kinds of flowers. This is a monkey face flower. And we're going out on another trail now. We're going on what is called the Garden Wall Trail. And the Garden Wall Trail is on the Pacific side of the drainage here of the Continental Divide. And all of these views will be from the Garden Wall Trail. And there's a group ahead of us. We will be going out. This is grizzly bear country, and you probably should go with a group so that you're making enough noise and the grizzlies will not stay around. That's the theory of the thing anyhow. And that lake that you see between the mountains there, that is our MacDonald Lake again, over to the west. And finally, we are not going into it right now, but that is Granite Park Chalet. My wife and I had a little disappointment this day. We hiked in, we did not have reservations. We hiked in hoping somebody would cancel. Nobody canceled. So that day, my wife and I hiked 16.2 miles or something of that nature and went back to our tent and camped that night. We were a little tired by the time we got there because this is hiking at about 7,000 feet. So that makes a difference too. And we're on our way back now to our car and to go down to where we had left the tent. I've never identified this little bird here, but he followed us for at least about 3 miles on the way back. He would fly and then sit in a little shrub or bush or something, and then we would catch up with him, and then he'd fly. And so he was our companion for a while. And believe me, we appreciated the little bird. This little guy is a marmot. The closest thing we have to it is a woodchuck, but this guy is much hardier than a woodchuck. He's a hibernator, and he hibernates right about at timberline. So he has to get under cover before the snow covers everything, every place that he wants to go. This is what timberline looks like up through here, just scrubby trees, and then above those points there would be almost no trees. So it is a real rugged country. Now down below in here is going to the Sun Highway, and my wife is walking here on the Garden Wall Trail. All kinds of beautiful meadow flowers, upland flowers. And the highway is down here, and some people tell my wife she's crazy. This is her up here. And here's the highway coming across here. This is one of the delights in Glacier, and especially on the years where they have a good bloom. This is bear grass. It's also called basket grass. I believe it's a member of the Lily family, if I'm not mistaken. And we were able to see some up there. Now we have gone down beyond that waterfall, beyond the Logan Pass, that is, and we're hiking into Virginia Falls here. So this is Virginia Falls. We're about 3/4 of a mile off the road now, hiking, and hiking into Virginia and St. Mary's Falls. This is St. Mary's. They're on the same stream. It wasn't a bad hike, not too much ups and downs and so forth. That's St. Mary's. And this is what the water in between them looks like. So it really looks like it's got some glacial dust in it. That's the effect that it has. And still very close to the highway, and this is only 100 yards off the highway. This is Bering Creek. And quite often you will see the little water ouzel in here. The water ouzel is a little slate-colored bird that actually goes down under the water there and walks along the bottom and catches larvae and maybe minnows and stuff like that. I have still not got a great picture of him. This is one right here. But in order for you to see him, what he really looks like, I used a museum specimen that I took a picture of there at Glacier. That's what the little guy looks like. And he's out winter, summer, anytime. He puts his nest behind a waterfall quite often, so he has to fly through it to get to his nest. This lovely picture is fireweed with the Bering Creek in the background. Now we're going down into, well, we're still there. I think this is the water ouzel's nest. Sometimes he puts it behind the waterfall, but it always catches the spray of flowing of water. He likes that for his nest. Now we're going down into the southeast part of the park, and this is the Two Medicine area. This is Running Eagle Falls. This is considered Trick Falls, because at the very last picture in this area, I'll show you this same waterfall, but nothing will be coming over the top. It'll all be coming right here. And we are going in, that's from a different angle. We're going into Two Medicine Lake. This is by Two Medicine Lake, and we're hiking into Upper Two Medicine Lake. That's my wife walking ahead of me. And here are two waterfalls in the same picture, right up by Two Medicine Lake. Here's that beautiful squaw grass or basket grass. And Two Medicine Lake nestles down in there. You can also walk in through here. You're in grizzly bear country, but we saw the evidence, but we did not see any of the bears. So we take little bells that we pin to our pants or to our belt or to the boots, so that we make some noise as we're going forward, even if we're not talking. Now this is the lower Two Medicine Lake in late afternoon, and here it is the next morning. So it's a right pretty place. This is lower Two Medicine Lake, and here's that same waterfall. And see, nothing coming from there. All of it's coming from below. Now we're going over into the last area that we will look at, and that's called the Many Glaciers area. We are going in from the eastern side of the mountains, and this is the hotel there, and this is Swift Current Lake. And that's Mount Gould with the dark clouds around us. I'm right on the edge of Swift Current Lake there. We've never stayed in that hotel. We've stayed in cabins here, and we've stayed in the campground. Although we tent, and we're not allowed in that campground anymore because they have had grizzly bear attacks there. So we have to camp at another one over by St. Mary's Lake if we camp. And this is Swift Current Lake. And then over on that far side, my wife and I were on this trail.